The storm thrashed against the mansion windows the night Joshua Crane realized he was utterly alone, despite owning everything a man could dream of. The world saw him as an untouchable billionaire, cold, calculating, feared in boardrooms and worshipped in business magazines. But in the lonely corners of his massive home, he was just a man terrified of being betrayed again. That fear drove him to a decision that would soon change everything. He would fake a coma to see who truly cared, and who only loved his money. He thought he was prepared for whatever truths he'd uncover. He had no idea that the soft-spoken maid who dusted his hallways would end up breaking him in ways no corporate rival ever could. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more heart-touching stories to life. Joshua's plan was meticulously crafted. He let his doctors and staff believe he had suffered a sudden collapse caused by stress. They were instructed, through his private lawyer, to keep him at home for recovery. But the real purpose was far from medical. Hidden security cameras would record everything, every whisper, every conversation, every true intention of the people around him. He expected greed, maybe indifference. What he never expected was grace. Grace Hamilton had been working in Joshua's mansion for only 6 months. A quiet woman in her late 20s with auburn hair usually tied back neatly and eyes that carried a gentleness the world often dismissed. She moved through the house like a soft breeze, noticed only when something suddenly felt cleaner, smoother, kinder. Joshua barely remembered the day he hired her. She had simply stepped into the sea of strangers who worked for him daily. He had no reason to pay her any particular attention, but everything changed the moment he began observing from behind his fake paralysis. At first, the staff acted predictably. His chief financial officer visited only to ask about pending signatures. His distant relatives appeared, but the visits were short and filled with questions about inheritances. Even the household staff shifted, some cutting corners on duties, others speaking too freely when they believed their employer was unconscious. Joshua felt bitterness rising inside him. His suspicions had been correct. Then one morning, Grace entered his room. She moved quietly, gently adjusting the blanket across his body, treating him not as a billionaire lying motionless, but as a human being deserving tenderness. Joshua didn't expect her to speak, but after a long silence, her voice rose, soft and trembling. "You probably can't hear me, but I just want you to know that you're not alone." Joshua felt something stir in him at those words. It wasn't recognition, it was vulnerability, raw and unexpected. Day after day, Grace returned. She brought fresh flowers to his bedside, humming faint songs as she cleaned. She spoke to him while she worked. Never gossip, never complaints. Just small pieces of her heart she seemed to think no one would ever hear. She talked about her younger brother, Noah, and how she worked 2 jobs to help him through college. She mentioned losing her parents early, learning to survive by herself, fighting everyday battles without bitterness. She spoke of kindness as if it were a language she had taught herself. Joshua listened to every word, feeling something inside him soften in ways he didn't understand. Then came the day that changed everything. The sky outside was glowing with morning light when Grace entered, holding a small Bible, worn and creased. She placed it on the table beside him and sat at the edge of the bed. Joshua sensed something different about her, something heavy. She took a deep breath, and with her voice shaking, she began what would become the confession that shattered him. "I don't know why I'm saying this," she whispered, fingers trembling as she clasped his hand. "But today I felt like I needed to tell you the truth. Because you remind me of someone I failed." Joshua's heart thudded painfully in his chest. He kept still, but inside he leaned into every word. "My father," she continued, "was a good man, but he got sick, and I was so busy trying to earn money, trying to take care of everything, that I wasn't there the night he needed me most. I missed his last moments. I live with that guilt every day. So every time I come in here, every time I adjust your blanket or talk to you, it's like I'm trying to make up for what I couldn't do for him." Tears slipped down her cheeks, falling onto Joshua's motionless hand. "I don't know who you really are behind all the money and power, but you deserve compassion. Everyone does. And I just hope that if you ever wake up, you won't feel alone anymore. Joshua felt his throat tighten painfully. For years, he'd suspected everyone around him of selfish motives, but here was Grace, giving him the kind of kindness no amount of money could buy. Kindness rooted in her own heartbreak, her own humanity. That night, Joshua ended his charade. When Grace returned the next morning, she froze as Joshua slowly sat up. Shock washed over her, followed by confusion, and then something that looked like betrayal. "I heard everything," Joshua said, voice rough, burdened with guilt. "All of it. I wasn't really in a coma. I was testing people." Grace stepped back, tears still on her lashes, but now they carried hurt. "You pretended to be unconscious. You let people pour their hearts out without honesty in return?" Joshua lowered his head. He had expected anger. He had expected disappointment. But her pain struck him deeper than anything else. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't realize what your kindness would mean to me. I didn't expect someone like you to care." She stared at him, breathing unsteadily, and then shook her head slowly. "Kindness isn't something you measure or test, Mr. Crane. It's something you give without expecting anything back." Her words pierced him, and yet she didn't walk away. Over the next days, the house felt different. Joshua apologized. He explained his fears of betrayal, his loneliness, his mistakes. Grace listened, not with acceptance at first, but with a willingness to understand, and that was more than he believed he deserved. Slowly, she softened again, seeing the man behind the walls he had built. Joshua began to change. He visited the staff personally, thanking them. He donated anonymously to charities that mattered to Grace and her brother. He rebuilt relationships he had neglected for years. And through it all, Grace remained the quiet anchor guiding him toward becoming a better man. He never forgot the confession she gave when she thought he was unconscious, the confession that altered the entire course of his life. And one evening, months later, as they stood on the mansion balcony watching a golden sunset paint the sky, Joshua finally understood what his wealth had never been able to buy: genuine human connection. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support means more than you know. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what part of the story moved you the most?